Let's go. Very good. Very good. Hey, how's it going, Fortune? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, my weekend just blended into every weekend I've had in the last year. It's lots of YouTube and junk food. No. Hi, Matthew. How you doing, buddy? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I'm getting lots of exercise, but everywhere I go, I'm wearing a mask. So it's active, but also, you know what it's like. So, as I said, I took a week off. So we've been doing this kind of design class. We've been doing this for like 2 months or something now. And so I took a week off and I'm starting again from scratch. And so hopefully in that time, a few people have signed up, which is awesome. This is the very first class. And I basically did 8 classes prior, which means that at a certain point, we're going to get to the point where you have enough skills that you can start building your portfolio. And I think that maybe after the 8th class, you should be able to start building out like a portfolio website and start, doing 2 things. You want to be adding content to social media, which we said was the way that you were going to reach out to the greater public. You want to find something that you can something that you like that you can consistently post about, which is something that a lot of people don't do. But at the same time, you want to kind of be building up your portfolio site so that you're actually building up like usable content that you can talk about in a job interview. So that's kind of like the big picture for what I'm doing with this meetup. And again, hello, hello, hello to everybody who's new. It's really great to see you guys. As I mentioned to other users in the past, this is an online only meetup. That's because for me, in the future, I'd love to start traveling. After COVID is wrapped up, I'd love to kind of bounce around the world, and I'm working remotely now. So yeah, this is just a useful thing that you can do for designers, and give me lots of feedback. And if you ever see there's a Google form on the meetup sheet. If you want to give me some feedback, like what did you miss or what did you like, whatever, jump on it. But anyway, let's jump in. Let's jump in. Again, we have lots of new faces here, and thanks for taking your time. I know you've got a busy schedule. We're only going to be about 1 hour as an introduction, and we're going to talk about design research, which is something that most designers don't even think about. And that's just like, it's just hilarious to me because it's really the foundation for everything you work on. And hopefully this is going to affect most of your portfolio pieces. So I'm just going to share my screen, jump in here. So the way I've done this in the past was, I know I've taken lots and lots of meetups. I go to them all the time. And I know how exhausting it is to be in a lecture. So I don't want this to actually be a lecture. Most of these courses I want it to be interactive. So obviously I'm going to be pinging you guys for questions. And in most of these classes, we're actually going to do in-class exercises in Figma, so that you guys are actually doing something interesting and you're having fun and interacting with each other. So it's going to be good. So a little bit about my background. If you don't know me, I basically worked for over 5 years for a design agency in Vancouver. The name of the agency was called Convergence. Convergence is working downtown, like on Hornby Street. They're doing really well. And after 5 years, I was just kind of bored of doing the same thing. So I stepped away, but I have lots of love for the company, and they're growing and things are going well. This picture is actually from a meetup, way back in 2016. Obviously that's me and a few people from the company. Why were we going to meetups? We were going to meetups to try to hire developers. This is probably one of the biggest things you've noticed in Vancouver, is that it's hard to find talented people who aren't working. Young people like you guys, you get your skills, and then you jump into the workplace. That's great. For a lot of companies, it's really hard to find these people because they always want to work for Amazon and Microsoft and all these other companies. So we have to kind of scrap to find people. So we would actually sponsor these meetups, and we'd be like, hey, here's some pizza. And then, during that time, we would kind of schmooze and try to chat up the developers. Same thing with designers, but developers, we had to do the same thing. So here's what I want to talk about. Again, a lot of you guys have experience in design, which is awesome. For those of you who don't, I want you to imagine this scenario, right? Again, Amazon and Microsoft, they have their own products, they're kind of internal projects. But I was working for an agency, which is actually very similar to what freelancers do. Is anybody here in freelance? You guys give me could you put your hand up or something? Is anybody here a freelancer? Maybe not. So yeah, the content here is that, like, if you're working in one of these agencies, and there's actually a lot of agencies in my city, just like any other city, like San Francisco or Chicago or something, we meet clients all the time. And actually, meeting clients is great, but at the same time, you don't want to waste your energy, right? Because if I spend 1 hour in a meeting with a client, that's 1 hour that I'm not working on real projects. So we actually start building up this skill of estimating projects. Now, this is a little bit outside the realm of what a designer does, but you might be pulled into one of these meetings, and you're trying to charm the client. Why are you in the meeting? Well, you're probably in the meeting because your boss or your CEO or your business director wants the client to think, hey, look, we have all these great people, they're friendly, they're well-spoken, they're nice. Like, it's kind of part of the sales pitch. And they want to know that you have talented people at the company. And I'm just going to run down this real quick, and we'll get into the next stuff. Here's what the client wants to know. The client wants to know 3 things. Well, what you want to get from the client, the whole purpose of this meeting is you want to get a few things from the client. The first thing you're going to get is you want to know what the problem is, right? So if you're meeting with a CEO, you have a little chit chat, but eventually you want to get down to the real question, which is, what is their problem? What is the issue? And you think, okay, their issue is we're not making enough money. Obviously, it's about money. We got a new website and nobody uses it. We built a new app, but nobody likes it. There's got to be some kind of technical challenge here that they're giving you. And this is the first part that you need, right? And as a designer, you're already thinking like, okay, I'm already thinking about how to solve this. The second thing that you're going to get from the client is the budget. And again, this is already kind of pretty bland, but it does matter because it's sort of like the number of problems that you can solve in, say, 8 weeks is a bit different from what can you solve in 6 months, right? So you say, oh, you're trying to suss out how much money they're willing to spend. And again, the CEO or the project manager will come up with a charming way of asking this question. By the way, I actually know a lot of developers. I know a lot of agencies in Vancouver. After a few years, they just hear about an idea and they just say, oh, that's a $500,000 project, or that's a $200,000 project, right? That's just a skill that you build up after a while, but it's actually a challenge for pretty much anybody, to be able to estimate on this is very, very, very important. And the last thing is, of course, the deadline, right? You talk to the client, they said, we need this to be done in 3 months. Okay, so all these things will come together and your company will basically issue them a proposal. And then, they're probably talking to 3 other people and you win. Now, anyway, sorry, I was trying to wondering what this was. So just give me an example, right? So say you had a meeting with a client and they said, we want to make this app for photographers. They want to build this app. It's like an alternative to Instagram. And the whole point here is that real photographers have a lot of problems with Facebook, or they have a problem with like the photo technicalities in Facebook, and so on and so on. Like, this is an example of what a client might give you. They'd say, we're willing to pay $100,000 if you can get it done in 8 weeks. Now, this is where you guys come in, because a lot of people will kind of turn to you as the designer and say, okay, they signed the contract, go design it, right? And to be honest, a lot of designers would be very happy with this deal, right? It's like, okay, guys, you guys just shut up. I'm going to put my headphones on. I'm going to listen to music. I'm going to come back in a week and I'm going to give you the mock-ups. It's going to be beautiful, right? So here's the thing we're missing, right? Is you're supposed to do a lot of research. And this is kind of an issue that comes into a lot of designs, especially at the small scale, where the client basically tells you, he's like, no, 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 no. I told you what the problem is. You go solve it. But in the real case, you have to do research. And research is really just figuring out what the problem is and understanding the users. So in this case, it would be photographers, right? You would have to get on the internet, or you'd have to get on the phone, or you'd have to go out and find a whole bunch of photographers in your city, interview them, and then come back. Now, there's a lot of stuff you can do online. You can understand a lot about the competition, but at the end of the day, you have to get good at building this kind of internal skill, which is like, I know how to interview people. This is part of your talent. And again, when you think about your portfolio, think about it, right? Imagine all the portfolio pieces that you have that don't even mention the user or don't even mention doing research, right? Imagine what the potential hirer is going to think. It's like they built an app and they didn't even ask the user. That's the kind of logic, right? Now, I'm just going to make a little note here that this is a separate job. Technically, if you go to a really big company like I said, Facebook or Amazon, they have teams of user researchers, right? They don't just hire one person. They have teams of user researchers. It is a 9 to 5 job. I know that. But in your case, you might be working at a agency that has 30 staff members, and you might just be a team of UX designers. So I think this is something that you could actually learn from and build into your skill set. Because there's a lot of places you could work that they can't figure out how to hire this person. It's a really hard to pitch your boss on a user researchers. I know because I tried many times. As I said here, this is a separate job, right? So technically this is its own job, but for this exercise, we're just going to kind of internalize it because it is related to your job in a very big way. You cannot do this job without research, no matter what the client says. So here's what I want to do. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use one of Zoom's little breakout rooms for a bit. So I want you guys to sort of, maybe for a few minutes, I'm going to break you guys into small groups. And I want you guys to discuss some of your beef or some of your issues with a few very popular tools, right? So in this case, you guys are going to be the users. And I want you guys to just rant, tell me all the things you don't like about the following apps. Okay, so I got Facebook, Facebook, Zoom, and Doordash. Doordash has recently been very popular, and I think it's something that we all know. It's all internalized, and I think it's a kind of a fun little exercise. So what I'm going to do is I got 12, 13 people. So I'm going to break you guys into groups. If I can. Sorry. So I'm going to break you guys into groups, and I just want you guys to maybe spend 3 or 4 minutes discussing things that you do not like about the following 3 apps: Facebook, Zoom, and Doordash. So yeah, go for it. You should get an introduction and you'll jump into a small room very soon. Right on. Let's say, and Winnie, you should see an introduction message, and then you can jump into room 4. Hi, Winnie. Hey, Winnie, did you get an introduction message? There should be a dialog box, and if you click it, you'll go into room 4. Just checking out my background here. Oh, okay, so it's just bounced. Just checking. All right, very cool, very cool. So I got 3 ideas here. I guess the first one is Facebook. Can you guys give me 1 or 2 of your ideas about things about Facebook that, bother you, or things that you wanted to change? I know there might be a few.
I find Facebook, the the homepage is very cluttered. There's a lot of um, information going on
There we
here,
go.
and there was a lot of changes going on in the last couple of years. So whenever I got used to something, they would change it again, and then I would notice that the Messenger was now a different thing. And now I just use Messenger. I don't really use the Facebook app as
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
So very cool.
Yeah, I'm same boat.
Nice. Yeah, I know a lot of people basically just kind of shrugged it last time and they said like, "Oh, I don't use Facebook. I haven't used it in ages." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of how it feels." Yeah. What about Zoom? Again, we're using it right now. Anybody got bugs with Zoom or issues at all?
Uh, when we split off into groups, I didn't like that we couldn't see the presentation anymore because I forgot what the other options were.
Nice, nice,
I
nice.
also can't chat. Yeah. We don't
Oh
can't
yeah.
snap it in.
What about if you could like customize your Zoom screen? So like maybe like you can personalize it, kind of like filters or something like that, or just give more information for like webinars like this. Maybe say like where I am, you know, I make stupid stuff like what's my favorite color or something like that, just kind of like icebreakers.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I actually saw a little meme. I think you probably already seen it a lot. If you watch like on Instagram, you could see reels. And I saw this meme and it was kind of like made me think like all the students who are like high school or even, younger, they're all familiar with Zoom and they believe that whenever there's a breakout room, you basically just stare at the computer for 3 minutes. And I was like, oh, is that what people are doing? Are people like, do they just like hate Zoom? So like, maybe that's not you guys because you guys are hardcore students, but I think maybe young people they just like they stare at the screen when the breakout rooms are on. I'm like, oh, that's depressing. Like, just don't do it then. All right. The other one was DoorDash. Again, a lot of people use it. Anybody got any bugs or any issues?
I do. It's really hard for me to determine pickup and delivery because I always intend to do pickup and then it always defaults to delivery and I always end up paying like extra for my food. So
Ouch. Okay, good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because like you've already identified something where it's like, oh, it's obvious. I make a mistake and it's costing me money. And obviously it's not intentional. And it almost makes you think like, do they know about this? And they're literally intentionally doing it to kind of, get more money.
Yeah, there's
from
like
me?
2 places where you can switch between pickup and delivery. But if you don't do it at both places, it's just a really friction, like that process has a lot of friction in it.
I know that. Oh, yikes. All right, good. Yep.
And
Please.
also, not DoorDash. I use DoorDash too, but I use mostly Uber Eats, and I found it really hard to like. Sometimes they say you have promotions, like if you order over $20 and you get 20% off, but the promotion doesn't automatically apply to your order. So if you forget to apply it, then you don't get the promotion. And also applying it is not that easy. You have to click into it and then select the available promotion, apply, and like there are just extra steps to apply the promotion, and you just have to be really like you really need to they do promote it on their front page, on their home page. So you need to see it first, know there's a promotion, and then when you order you have to make sure you go in and then apply. It's just a lot of extra steps.
Yeah, it totally sounds like a drag, like one of those things that you get in retail where they're like, yeah, fill out this form and you get 15% back, and it's like you just throw it away. It's too much work. All right, I'm just going to jump in here. So you guys got the main idea. Now, a lot of you are probably already very good at research. You might have even done it before. My whole thing is you might be very good at research. I just want to make sure that you're letting people know on your portfolio. So if you already have a website or it's kind of like a WordPress or something like that, I want you to maybe go back to your portfolio and say like, did I mention this anywhere in my portfolio? Did I let people know like, here are the key takeaways that I was trying to improve or trying to fix or what have you. And in this case, like all the stuff that you guys said, you guys are users. So I'm not really considering what the corporate heads want or anything like that. I'm just focused on the users. There's an old joke where we always say like UX designers are user defenders. The user is not in the room. Everybody's in the room, the developers and but the user is the only one that's not in the room. And you kind of feel some protection as a user experience designer, right? You're like, I have to stand up for them because they're not here. So anyway, I'm just going to pick apart this book. It's one of these book aparts. Again, Erica Hall is a kind of an agency founder, and she actually studied research in university. And this is all about how to kind of get up and running with user research. So I'm going to show you some examples. You might know some of these. It's just a little crash course, and maybe think about how you might go back and rebuff your current portfolio ideas, or just kind of design the future, your future portfolio entries. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a casual interview. So one of the things that I did, actually, I just want to make sure, am I sharing my screen? Sorry.
Not yet.
Thanks. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, this is the book that I was trying to talk about. So Erica Hall, Just Enough Research. I'm going to pick this one apart. It's a little book. It costs about $9.99. If you want it, check it out. But I'm just pulling all this information from there because it was a fantastic read. The first thing that I want to think about is, say your client approaches you with this photograph idea, right? You're like, okay, project sounds cool. I can see that you guys have a market. It makes sense. But you got a demand. You say, okay, in the first 2 weeks, I'm going to do some user research. I have to. I absolutely have to. And what you're going to do is you're going to go on the internet and you're going to find one of these user interview websites. And you're going to say, I'm going to interview 5 people, at least 5 people, and I'm going to deep dive on this conversation with them. And the most important thing I want to know is, what is their day-to-day life like? Because this kind of interview is not really a block of questions. It's a natural, free-flowing interview. And again, all this kind of stuff, you're just kind of improvise as you go. And all you're doing is you're saying, look, I don't want to make assumptions about this other person's life, right? I don't want to make assumptions about how they see the world. So this is just going to be me exploring how they see the world. The data that you're going to get from these is going to kind of blend into maybe the future interviews, but it should actually shed light on where they struggle or the problems that they have with, say, using Instagram, right? Instagram was the main competitor here. So we could just really talk to them about how they use Instagram as photographers. Now, the next one I want to mention here is a little bit more interesting because you're going to try to use this data and you're going to try to sell something to the client. So I'm assuming here the client has already signed the contract. So you're not trying to sell them in that way, but you are trying to persuade them to kind of fall in love with this idea, right? If you just start building stuff and the client doesn't like it, guess what? They're just going to throw it out. And they're going to say, yeah, I know you guys did it, but I didn't sign off on it. So the guided interview is essentially you guys sending out like a survey of, obviously I've talked about Google Forms. This is a kind of a pretty basic way of doing it. Your company can spend money online to send out 50, 100 or whatever surveys that people can fill out. And the way this works is that every question is like a block question. And that means that you ask the same questions to everybody. And this is a little bit more numeric, as we say here, quantitative. And that means that you can actually turn the responses here into a graph or a chart or something visual, right? We want to be able to say that if, I asked 100 people and they all said that these 3 were the most important problems that we need to solve, right? That's kind of like the ultimate question for a researcher, right? Is to say, we already know the 3 things that you have to build in the next 8 weeks, and we're going to ignore everything else. That's the idea. Anyway, whatever you need to make it statistically relevant, 100 or 150, this would be terrific and really should win over the client. I know the client is going to have a lot of ideas. They always like to feel like they can kind of jump into the design process. And again, I know. But that's usually because you don't have user research. Your user research can actually kind of combat the confidence that the client has, saying, I know what's best, and so on. And the last thing that I want to mention here is, as this project develops, so I'm gonna back up a little bit. Typically, the way we work is you might do an 8-week sprint, or an 8-week phase of work. And after the end of the 8 weeks, the client has paid all their money. And what usually happens, if your work is successful, now people are downloading the new version, they're liking it, they're enjoying it. Very often what the client will do is he'll come back and he'll say, hey, that was fantastic, let's do it again. And they'll say, in the next phase of work, I want to work on this, this, and this. And he'll start talking about, strategies for the future, things that are blocking you. And in this case, you might be able to, again, as long as the client gives you permission, you might be able to actually invite beta users into the system, and you can actually watch them using the app. This is actually pretty hardcore. And again, I only do this on the kind of 2nd, 3rd, or 4th phase of work, because, when the project is private, you can't really invite people in to start using it, right? So this is an example of how you might take cameras and you will actually watch people's facial expression as they use the app, or watch their body language as they use the app. And you'll start to see those kind of hot zones. Where are people getting frustrated? Where are they kind of, getting annoyed or disliking the app, or what have you? And by the way, for anybody who's building web apps, they have the exact same technology for web apps. You guys might look some up online, but all they're doing is they're just tracking the mouse cursor, and you can basically just find out where all the users are getting stumped, and kind of drill down and try to resolve those screens. But these are a little bit more advanced, in that they're not in the first phase, they're usually second, third, fourth phase. And the last thing here I want to mention is focus groups. Focus groups, we all know, we think of like the commercial sector, like product development. You talk about cookies and that kind of thing. The big problem with focus group is that once you get more than one person in a room, there's kind of sort of, how would I call it, psychodynamic factors at play. That the dominant person will talk very loudly and the quiet person won't speak up. They might disagree, but they don't want to mention it, right? There's always kind of social issues that kind of interfere with it. So I just want to say, we don't really think it's very useful from a research perspective. Just try to focus on those key 5 to get started. And then as you get some more, some more numbers, and then you can build up the other sort of 2 and 3 interview styles. All right, so as I said, I've talked about it a little bit in the past. I'm gonna do maybe 2 or 3 more minutes. And again, I hope you guys are enjoying the breakout rooms. I'll just make them quick. If you guys have nothing to say, don't worry about it. But yeah, think about Facebook, think about Zoom, think about Doordash, think about some of the problems that you already heard people talking about. And I want you guys to sort of think about, like, what kind of research might we do? Or what kind of questions might we ask? So I'm going to break you out here. I'm going to go to right here. So I'm going to go back into our same groups, and yeah, just talk about a little bit, what kind of questions would you ask? What kind of questions would you ask to current users or new users of Instagram, talking about these 3 things? Right, so just thinking about it, what kind of questions would you ask related to Facebook, Zoom, and Doordash users? Very cool.
Sorry, I left before you could finish, Fortune. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was done. It was just like, we had like a few more seconds.
Just checking.
You Zoom user interviews. I mean, Zoom problem. When you get that warning, you leave, and then you don't realize you have a few seconds left.
Yeah.
Or maybe a different kind of message.
Actually, I was going to say, speaking of Zoom, my old company, we used to use Google Meet like basically 100 times a day. We were just always using, and it was weird. We thought like, well, doesn't everybody have a Google web address? And
Right.
then now everybody's using Zoom because not everybody has a web address from Google. But
Right.
I always thought Google Meet was pretty good.
Mhm.
But anyway, all right, a couple things from let's see, from Facebook. I mean, from Facebook is great because you can find users all over the place, right? What kind of questions or what kind of interviews would you have? Anybody?
Yeah, I think I would go broad, like tell me about your experience using the app and then just sort of see where they take it. And I feel like if you listen long enough, what they're most passionate about is going to come out, whether it's positive or negative. And then from there, you can sort of drill down, or if they're just very vague or you're not getting your data points that you need from them, then you can move to more guided questions and discover what features are very meaningful to them, what adds to their experience, and what takes away from that. So if you're going to be doing a version 2, version 3, version 6, we want to make sure that we leave those features intact, because if that is a motivator for a base of users and you get rid of it, are you going to lose out on those users then? Or if we can solve the pain point that they're experiencing or the friction, like other people here have mentioned, that will create a more enjoyable experience, and that'll perpetuate.
That's awesome, dude. And I guess it's weird. You mentioned like you're kind of drilling down to try to find the really passionate point. It's like, it's so awesome when you talk about a social network, because people are like, look, I actually care about this a lot. These are my friends. And, you can actually feel how passionate they are. And remember, Facebook used to be really awesome. It used to be, really amazing. We did love it at one point. And, those days are long gone. But yeah, I know there's a lot of weird changes. What about Zoom? Again, same thing. Can anybody tell me what kind of questions would you ask, or what kind of interview would you hold?
Something that I liked that Fortune said before was before you even start asking about Zoom, ask like what other services that you use that might be competing with Zoom. So like, do you use video meeting websites, like online remote websites or apps? What do you use it for? How often do you use it? What are things that you like about those apps that might be competing with Zoom, or what do you like about Zoom once they start to be more specific about their preference?
I love it. Again, thanks, Fortune. That's a really awesome idea. It's like, again, you're doing research, right? It's not like you're supposed to guess what they're thinking and then say, oh, was it this? Like, it's actually, you're listening. You just like listen, absorb, take notes, record with audio or how a video, however you want to do it. And like you say, you're learning. So try to abandon as many assumptions as you possibly can and say, I'm just going to learn. I'm not going to assume anything about who they are, because I'm telling you, that's what literally every designer does. It's one of our biggest mistakes is we say, I'm young or whatever, right? I'm a guy or I'm a gal or I'm a whatever. And you think you understand the group, but actually you don't, because you're a human being. You can't read people's minds, right? So these are all fantastic ideas. Just get good at being a really good listener. I would actually mention here that I mentioned that the first meeting that you have with a client, you'll be in the room, and there'll probably be a senior developer in the room because you want to talk about technology. And a lot of people might say, well, what's your job in that room? to be honest, my job in that room is probably to shut up. It's really not to impress the client because I have no research. Why would I tell them like, let's do this, let's do like, that sounds really confident, but actually it's like statistically and scientifically a terrible idea. So very often the designers shut up in that first meeting, and the developers are very confident. They're very talkative because they say, we can build this, we can't build this, right? It's kind of scientific. You can say binary wise, like one is true, one is false. The designers are very quiet and they're just there to listen and take notes, as you said, kind of like a researcher. And the last one was Doordash. Was there any change there, or Doordash? Do you have any questions that you might ask, or interview styles?
We were thinking it'd be better to use some sort of feedback within the app rather than qualitative research, because the process is pretty, there's a lot of different parts to it. And specifically the user pain we'd like to solve is when they're pushing the user or forcing the user to pay for delivery. That's more like we'd want to see feedback if people were having a lot of pain with that. Because obviously the user would answer like, yeah, that I don't want that. So
I guess, yeah, sorry. If it actually, sorry, please go.
So if we need to somehow quantify that them forcing is actually making them lose money in the long run.
Yeah, I want to make sure that if the client, say it was Doordash or a competitor to Doordash, if they were really being that annoying, you mentioned, she was talking about promotions or these 20% off things. Like if it really got to be a big deal and there are other offerings, like you said, there's Uber Eats or various other offerings, at a certain point, I'm just going to stop using the first one and I'm going to start using the competitor. So a lot of you have talked about, talking about competitors. And again, I got no problem with that, right? It's just like try to find all these different parts that people are using and maybe just try to dig down and say like, well, why do you like that better than the other one? And they will have an opinion, which is fantastic. Now, one of the things that you often see whenever you imagine like what is a user researcher or a product researcher, you very often see a lot of sticky notes on the wall, right? Very often you'll see like, oh, we put some sticky notes on the wall and we drew some lines to connect them, right? What they're doing is because they've talked to so many people, they have like 500 ideas of all the features that they should add to the product, right? So when you have 500 ideas, you really have to figure out a really good way to filter down to the really good stuff. And so maybe some of the ideas are duplicates of each other. And so you say, oh, this goes with this, it's the same feature, or this goes with this. And the other one might be, you might try to come up with clever ways to eliminate certain features and so on. So all that whiteboard stuff is really just them trying to filter down in a convenient way. And the reason why they're using paper is because they want to be able to like move stuff around, like physically move stuff around, as opposed to just doing it digitally, where you start to get married to a certain idea. Anyway, awesome stuff, guys. Actually, I want to just say one more thing. We've been talking about these photographic ideas like competitor to Instagram. Obviously, there are many competitors to Instagram. They're not as big as Facebook, but they're doing well and they're making money. Here's a really cool idea. If you and your group of friends or your family members or whoever, if you can think of 5 photographers or people who are just really in that zone, like they have a part-time job doing wedding photos or something like that, think about how you could turn this idea into a personal project, right? You could do it. You could totally do it. But you have to make sure that you do the research, because if you don't, the rest of the project is kind of meaningless, right? So you can actually take this idea and say, I'm going to interview 10 people. I'm going to ask my friends, do you know anybody who has a part-time job related to photos? And I'll hook up with them. I'll get them on a Zoom call. I'll have this kind of like, I would say, open-minded, this kind of laid-back conversation. It's very broad. It's not this kind of hardcore, it's just kind of open-ended where you're listening. And then maybe afterwards, you could go back a second time and you can kind of like drill down with specific questions. And you could turn this into a personal project on your website. Now, the really killer idea there is, okay, fine, it's on my website, but think about all the companies that are like Instagram, or they have apps on the App Store, on the Google Play Store, right? Can you show them your portfolio? You know, wouldn't they be the kind of the perfect person to kind of show your portfolio to or talk about this industry? So this is a kind of a really cool idea that a lot of designers don't do, is they have all this cool stuff in their portfolio and then they just show it to random people. You know, they apply to random companies. But it would be a lot more interesting if you had like a focus. You are focused on a few key metrics or a few key ideas, and then you showed it specifically to companies that are really in that field. And they're like, wow, this person is awesome. They would love to be on the team, and so on and so on. Now, as long as we have research, it sounds good, right? If you don't have research, you may as well just make it up, right? You just made up all this stuff. It's not real, okay? So awesome stuff. Just some ideas about how you guys might kind of work on the, sorry, I keep forgetting to. Awesome ideas, a way you guys kind of work this into your portfolio, because I know that's what a lot of you are thinking about. And we'll kind of get into that in a bit. So this is the idea that we kind of came up with, right? Is we would have a proposal. You might talk to the client, and the client might say, okay, well, we can afford to pay you for 1 week of a study session, but then after that, you have to get into the design. Like, you might kind of work that into the phase. If you can't do that, you're going to have to do it on your own, which is unfortunately what a lot of clients do. Okay, so I'm not going to give you guys any homework, but what I want you guys to do, if you don't already have it, please download Figma and think about this photographic app. If you wanted to start calling people after you were able to call them, you know, were you able to kind of filter out what are the top 3 features that your friends really want to see that Instagram does not have? We're going to be trying to use Figma throughout the rest of this class. Throughout the next few weeks. So if you don't already have it, please get it. Obviously, it's free and it's cross-platform, so it's on Mac and Windows, and you guys should be pretty good at it. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Thanks for your time, and like I said, if you guys have any questions, please hit me up on Instagram. I'm always retweeting stuff that's kind of like job openings and stuff like that, so don't be shy. Hit me up, and yeah, if you have any questions, please throw them at me.
Like right now?
Sorry. Yeah, you can ask me questions.